Okay, on to the sociology section. Get it. Sociology section. Did I say that? Archaeology, I meant. Jeez, not sociology. The problem is that a lot of archaeology is as bad as sociology. So they're linked a little bit in my mind. I start off with The Ancient Engineers by Sprague L. de Camp. L. Sprague de Camp, sorry. This is a fantastic book, which I also have in hardcover. This is the original, which I bought for like $8 at one of those sales, Barnes & Noble, and brought from Utah. And got this one for 50 cents a strand, because it's paperback size. Very, very good book if you're interested in ancient engineering. If you want to know how brilliant and genius the Greeks and the Romans and so on were, that's good stuff. So I highly recommend it. I've got excerpts from it in different, The Rise of Civilization, for example, and I think I've got some excerpts from it in the Greek series, Greek history series. The Origins and Growth of Archaeology by Glyn Daniel. Probably very dry. I started it, got to page 28, but the text doesn't begin until page 13, so they kind of cheat. And it is dry, and I think it's probably academic dribble for 50 cents. Unveiling Man's Origins, L.S.B. Leakey and Van Morris Goodall. You've heard of Goodall, Jane Goodall. Van Morris is different. And Leakey, I'm sure you've heard of Leakey. Louis B. Leakey, published in 1969. So that I need to have to teach the history of evolution. I need to have it on hand as a resource for teaching the history of evolution. I did a pretty good job of running over the theory of evolution one day with the students when toward the end of the year. I knew I wasn't going to have some of them in the next year. The one family was moving across the county, so I tried to give them then quickly some American history, because I knew they'll never get it anywhere else, and an introduction to evolution and a couple other important things. Okay, Primates, Studies in Adaptation and Variability by Phyllis C. J., or edited by Phyllis C. J. I think this is a bunch of academic essays, yeah. Experiment and Quantification in the Study of Baboon Behavior in its Natural Habitat by K.R.L. Hall. That's just one of 20 or so. So it's about primates for $1. Chester G. Starr, Early Man. I've had this for a long time, brought it from Utah. And pretty good portions of this have been excerpted from on my Civilization series, The Rise of Civilization. Very good book. And we'll also do Starr's other book that I have, A History of the Ancient World. This is quite well used. This is also an excellent book. He gives as much space to the Greeks and Romans as they deserve. Speaking of the Greeks and the Romans versus, of course, like India and China and stuff. Early Civilization in China. I thought this would be good to read someday, just to know how far behind they really were compared to the West. I know they had some things first. They had everything first, as the saying goes, but they didn't do anything with it. Economics and Prestige in a Maya Community, the Religious Cargo System in Zinacantan. If you know about Cargo by Frank Cancian or Cankian. Stanford University Press, 1965. Cargo cults tried to imitate American soldiers who had come there in World War II, and the American soldiers would clear out patches of trees, and they'd sit around with these things over their ears, and they would talk into these other things, and then these huge birds would land and give them all kinds of stuff. And the Americans didn't do anything, but they made these funny long sticks, and they walked around with these sticks all the time. And they always had these sticks, and there's always these Americans with these sticks doing all this stuff. And so they made these types of sticks, and they cleared areas out there trying to get planes to land. And it's very ridiculous. The cargo cults, they really exist. They're talking about Erich Fromm's coming home and stuff. Erich Fromm is like the Jesus of their system, and he's going to come from America and bring them all like jeeps and stuff. Check it out. It's Richard Dawkins actually has a video on YouTube where he goes and talks about some of these. Fascinating. Alright. 4 Ways of Being Human. An Introduction to Anthropology by Jean Lizitsky. The fascinating account of living among 4 different tribes, something like that. Published in 1956. The fascinating and diversified ways of living among 4 primitive tribes. So that would probably be considered racist now to call them primitive. But, if I ever need to, I like having these resources available. You know. The world, and there's probably more videos available now. Just in the last 2 or 3 years, it's become available on these types of things. And just about any book you might want to have, you can probably get a documentary of it on Google or YouTube. So. The World of the Phoenicians by Sabatino Moscati. That is fantastic. You know, the Phoenicians were the first ones to put a sound with the symbol instead of having the symbol stand for something in the real world. So the Egyptians came close using symbols from the real world, like a B, our word for a bee thing, and so that word could stand for the B in my name, for example, Brandon, Mr. Crawford. Okay, The World of the Phoenicians, published 1968. So it might be pretty good. $1. Archaeology Discoveries in the 1960s. Did I get this for $1? I don't think so. I think I shipped it from Utah. It's probably $5 or something like that. By Edward Bacon, did I say? And it's, I don't know what it's going to be when I read it, but I needed to have some resources on archaeology in order to teach early history and archaeology to students at some point. The history of archaeological, I mean, I'm not going to go into it real deep, but they should have some precursory ideas about what archaeology is. The history of archaeological thought by Bruce Trigger. Like I said, archaeology is closely associated with sociology in my mind, and both of them are very suspect. 1989. Both of them are very suspect. You have to be careful. They'll read into these ancient tribes, oh, you know, there was no sexism, no ageism, no racism. There was total equality. They shared everything. And it's like they didn't even have writing. How do you know this? Well, they have these central grain pits in the middle of the town where everybody must have put their grain, and from that they get everything. The Age of Stonehenge by Colin Burgess. You've probably seen copies of this available. I bought it for discount at Barnes & Noble. I think I have 3 copies now. Originally published in 1980. Alright. Savagism and Civilization. A Study of the Indian and the American Mind. That's another one I'm going to have to put in. This rather than archaeology, could go in early Americana possibly. Right? By Roy Harvey Pierce. Copyright 1953-65. Now here's a note I just have to give you from the 3rd page. I read a ways into it. Read the introduction, 10 pages of introduction plus to page 8. The author says, I have intended to suggest how the theme in the book, savageism, is in effect a counter-theme to a larger one, civilization. So he tries to show that these two are mutually exclusive and can't coexist. And I just write out to the side, that's Islam versus the West in 2010, circa 2010. Alright, so I'll get around to that someday maybe. I really want to do a little bit on Indians because everyone thinks they're so nice and so perfect and so ecological and got along with the earth and, you know, such crap. Religion in Primitive Society by Edward Norbeck.